We're staying in the 06 drawingaccurately.dwg file, and you'll notice I've left the background as white and I've left the objects in there, the green lines and the red lines and the circles, and you'll notice that grid and snap are off. However, I have left object snap tracking and object snap on down on the status bar. Now we're going to look at polar tracking. That's this one down here on the status bar. There's polar tracking there. Click on the arrow and there's the settings, and you can see all the different angle increments. And if I click on the tracking settings there, that takes me into the drafting settings dialog and allows me to work with the polar tracking settings like so. Now I'm going to close that for the moment, just click on OK and leave the settings as they are. Polar tracking allows you to work and draw two regular angle increments. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in here on the rectangle shape on the left. I'm going to get that nice and clear, and I'm going to get it roughly central in the middle of the screen down towards the bottom, because what I want to show you is how to draft with polar tracking. Now, the polar tracking gives you an angle to work to, and in previous videos you'll have seen that green dashed line show up and give you an angle when you're drafting. Now, I always have it on. It just makes life so much easier when you need a defined 90-degree line or a defined 45-degree line. So what we're going to look at is we're going to look at drawing some lines at angles using the polar tracking. Now, be aware that polar snap can be involved here as well. Polar snap is down here on the snap setting. If I click there and go to snap settings, there's polar snap there. We'll talk about that in a moment. I'll just cancel that for the second. Now, let's have a look at using polar tracking. So it's down here. Click on the arrow. I normally set it to increments of 45 degrees. Now, the default is 90 normally. So you'll only get increments of like 90, 180 degrees, 270, 360. So where do these angles actually come from? Well, they come from your units and the way that AutoCAD measures angles. So if I type units and press enter, it opens up the drawing units dialog box, and you'll notice there's a direction option here. Click there and it gives you the direction control. So when we're going to the east as a point of the compass, it's 0 degrees. When we're going north upwards, it's 90 degrees. So that's where these degrees come from when you're drafting in AutoCAD. And it's all based around the compass, north, south, east and west, and the coordinates, the Y, the X, the Z. So I'll just OK that, and I'll OK that, and I'll leave everything as it is. I'm going to go down to polar tracking again, click on the arrow there, and set it to the 45-degree increment setting like that. So just select it like that, click on it, and it's set to 45-degree increments. So I'm going to go to the Home tab now on the ribbon, and I'm going to go to the Line command on the Draw panel there, like so. Now, it doesn't matter what layer you're on. This is purely drawing lines. It's asking me for the first point of my line. If I click here and use that endpoint snap, and then I come out that way, there's the tracking line. Can you see it? As I start moving horizontally, there's my 0 degrees. Now, because I've got it set to 45-degree increments, as I come up, it'll lock at 45. There you go. So as I move down that line, can you see I've got that green dash polar tracking line? So that green dash line knows that I'm exactly at 45 degrees. So I'm going to take that line all the way past. Now you'll notice, look, how cool is that? It snaps to the midpoint. That's because I've got polar tracking on, but also I've got that object snap tracking on. So it finds the intersection at exactly the midpoint of the top of that rectangular shape. So if I click there like that, and then come down this way, can you see I'm getting exactly 315 degrees? Another increment of 45 degrees. And the lovely thing is, even if I just went for the endpoint snap, that would be at 315 degrees. But I can come down that line, and I don't have to go all the way to the end. I can click, say, there, like that, and I know that that's at 45 degrees, or an increment of. And then I come out this way, and because I've got my object snap tracking on, if I hover over the endpoint and just drag upwards, can you see it all snaps together? So I click there, come down to the endpoint, click there, and I've got an exact shape. Press enter to finish the line command. But I know that those two angled lines are exactly at 45-degree increments. That's how your polar tracking works. Now, what about polar snap? How does that work? Well, let's have a look at this just over here in this clear space on the left. I'll quickly just draft a few lines to show you how it works. So what I do, I go down to my snap here. I go to snap settings, like so, and I switch on polar snap. Now I need a polar distance. I'm going to set that to, let's say, 50, like that. So polar snap is on, and I'm at 50. I'll click on OK. Now, make sure that you switch snap on for it to work. Otherwise, polar snap won't work. So now I go to the line command, come into the drawing area. I pick a point anywhere on the left there, drag it upwards. Look, it snaps to 50 at 45 degrees. I come down, another 50 at 45 degrees. 50, and then 50 again. How neat is that? Now, the lovely thing is I can come down here now, into snap again, go into my snap settings, change that polar distance to, say, 200. And I can do this mid-command. So now when I come up, can you see it's snapping there? And as I come up the angle, I'm getting the 200 instead, like that. How neat is that for exact drafting? If I press enter now, I know that all of those are working with polar snap. Brilliant if I need increments of angles and distances. Now remember, when you go back down here, polar snap will be on. If you want to work with your regular grid snap, make sure you go back to grid snap rather than polar snap. Otherwise, you'll be snapping to angles and distances all day long. So that's how you work with your polar tracking settings and polar snap in AutoCAD 2017.